The orbital defense platforms around Earth hung silent, their weapons systems depleted after weeks of relentless assault. Through the debris field of destroyed satellites and station fragments, the Varlian battle fleet emerged like a storm front of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. Their ships, organic curves mixed with crystalline structures, made Earth's remaining defensive vessels look like crude industrial tools in comparison. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the primary observation deck of Luna Base Aegis, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the overwhelming odds humanity faced. The Varlians had appeared 6 months ago, their message simple: submit or be eliminated. Humanity's answer had been equally simple, delivered through united defense forces and desperate courage. Status update on the Varlian fleet positions. She commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of command crushing down on her shoulders. The holographic display shifted, showing the enemy's methodical advance. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, her tactical officer, reported with practiced precision. 87 capital ships, Commander. Their energy signatures suggest they're preparing for another bombardment run. Our remaining orbital defenses won't survive another coordinated strike. Chen's fingers traced the familiar shape of her grandfather's old steel compass in her pocket, a reminder of human ingenuity in its simplest form. The irony wasn't lost on her that humanity's most sophisticated weapons had proved nearly useless against Varlian shielding technology. Their energy weapons simply reflected off the crystalline hulls, while conventional missiles were swatted aside by point defense systems that seemed to operate on pure thought. "Ma'am," called Dr. Emily Winters from her research station, her voice carrying an unusual edge of excitement. "I found something in the old engineering archives, something they buried so deep it survived every data purge." Chen crossed the command center in quick strides, conscious of every second ticking away. The Varlian fleet would begin their final approach within hours. "Show me." Winters pulled up schematics that looked decades old, dating back to the early quantum physics experiments. Project Prometheus. It was shut down because the theories violated half a dozen laws of physics. But they built it, Commander. They built one ship before the project was scrapped. The images rotating on the screen showed a vessel unlike anything in Earth's current fleet, where modern ships were sleek and standardized. This design was angular, almost primitive-looking, with massive power cores and experimental systems that modern engineers would consider heretical. Location. Chen demanded, her mind already racing ahead to possibilities. "Lunar Dark Zone 87, Winters replied. "Hidden in plain sight, powered down but preserved. They couldn't dismantle it because they couldn't predict how the quantum core would react. So they buried it." Chen studied the specifications with growing interest. The ship's theoretical capabilities seemed impossible. But then again, so had the Varlian technology when they first appeared. How long to power it up? Rodriguez interjected, "Commander, with respect, we're talking about experimental tech that was mothballed for good reasons. We don't even know if it'll work." "What we know," Chen replied, her voice hardening, "is that everything we've built and deployed since then hasn't worked. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones crazy enough to be forgotten." She turned to Winters. "How long?" 6 hours to bring the quantum core online. Another 2 for systems integration. If it doesn't tear itself apart in the process. Chen nodded, decision made. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare a skeleton crew. Dr. Winters, you're with us. We're going to wake up humanity's forgotten nightmare." As they hurried through Luna Base's corridors toward the transport bay, Chen's second-in-command, Commander David Park, fell into step beside her. "The Varlians will see us moving toward Dark Zone 87, he warned. "They might accelerate their timeline." "Let them watch," Chen replied, allowing herself a grim smile. "They've spent months mocking our primitive technology. It's time they learned why some experiments get buried instead of destroyed." The transport lifted off from Luna Base, skimming low over the lunar surface toward a region of perpetual shadow. As they approached, massive hangar doors ground open for the first time in decades, revealing the dark silhouette of humanity's most desperate gamble. The EDS Prometheus waited in its tomb of steel and regret, its quantum core dormant but intact. As Chen stepped onto its bridge 8 hours later, emergency lighting casting everything in a blood-red glow, she felt the weight of history settling onto her shoulders. One chance to prove that humanity's primitive understanding of physics might be exactly what they needed to survive. "All stations, report readiness," she ordered, settling into the command chair as the massive ship hummed to life around them. One by one, her skeletal crew confirmed their positions. Dr. Winter's voice came last, tense but controlled. "Quantum core is stabilizing. Field integrity at 87% and holding. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Chen nodded, her grandfather's compass now resting on the command console before her. "Signal Luna Base. Tell them to prepare for emergency protocols if this goes wrong." She paused, then added, "and inform the Varlian fleet that humanity is about to remind them why some weapons get buried rather than destroyed." The Prometheus rose from its lunar grave, its ancient systems awakening to a galaxy that had forgotten the dangers of human ingenuity. Above them, the Varlian fleet continued their advance, unaware that they were about to confront something that defied their understanding of physics itself. "Take us up," Chen commanded. "Let's show them what primitive really means." The Prometheus broke through the lunar dust cloud, its angular hull catching the harsh sunlight. Across the command bridge, warning indicators flashed as ancient systems struggled to maintain stability. Dr. Winter's fingers danced across her console, making constant adjustments to the quantum core's containment field. "Varlian fleet is responding," Rodriguez reported, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Their formation is breaking up." "They're laughing, Commander." The enemy's transmission cut through the ship's comm system, their translator struggling to convey the mixture of amusement and contempt in the Varlian admiral's voice. "Humans, you honor us with this museum piece. We had heard tales of your species' desperation, but this exceeds our expectations." Chen ignored the taunt, her attention focused on the status readings. "Dr. Winters, quantum core status. Holding at 92%. The theoretical models are proving accurate, but we're pushing systems that haven't been active in decades." Winters paused, checking another reading. "The phase variance is building faster than expected. We might only get one shot at whatever you're planning." The Varlian fleet had reorganized, forming a loose sphere around the ascending Prometheus. Their crystalline ships sparkled like deadly jewels in the void, energy weapons charging with familiar purple-white light. They were toying with them, Chen realized. They could have opened fire immediately, but chose to savor the moment. "All hands, secure for quantum phase shift," Chen ordered. "Dr. Winters, begin power transfer to the main drive." The Prometheus shuddered as energy from its quantum core redirected through systems that defied conventional physics. The ship's hull began to emit a soft, bluish glow that rippled like water. Among the Varlian fleet, sensors suddenly screamed warnings as they detected energy patterns their advanced technology couldn't categorize. "Quantum drive spooling up," Winters announced, her voice tense. "Core temperature rising but within theoretical limits. Phase variance at 60% and climbing." The Varlian admiral's voice returned, now tinged with uncertainty. "Your primitive attempt at deception ends now. Open fire." Purple-white beams lanced out from dozens of Varlian ships, crossing the void toward the Prometheus. Chen leaned forward in her command chair, watching the incoming fire with calculated intensity. "Hold position. Let them see." The energy weapons struck the Prometheus's glowing hull and passed through it as if the ship wasn't there. Behind them, lunar dust scattered from the impacts while the experimental vessel remained untouched. Silence fell across both human and alien communication channels. "What you're seeing," Chen broadcast to the Varlian fleet, "is what happens when you push human physics beyond its breaking point. We couldn't match your technology, so we chose to break reality instead." Rodriguez's tactical display lit up with new sensor contacts. "Multiple Varlian ships moving to surround us. They're charging what looks like graviton weapons. Perfect, Chen replied, allowing herself a small smile. Dr. Winters, quantum core status. Phase variance at 85%. If we're going to act, it needs to be soon. Chen nodded, reaching out to touch her grandfather's compass one last time. Initiate full quantum phase shift. Target the nearest Varlian Dreadnought. The Prometheus's glow intensified until the ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once, its outline blurring as it partially shifted between dimensional states. The Varlian fleet opened fire again, this time with weapons designed to tear apart the fabric of space itself. But you can't tear what isn't fully there. Phase variance at maximum. Winters called out. Quantum field is stable, but we're redlining every system we've got. Target locked, Rodriguez added. But Commander, we still don't know if the main weapon will fire. The Prometheus's primary weapon activated, channeling the power of its quantum core through systems that should never have existed. A beam of concentrated reality phase-shifted matter lanced out, striking the nearest Varlian Dreadnought. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the crystalline vessel began to fade from existence, its matter scattered across multiple dimensional phases until it simply ceased to be. Panic erupted across the Varlian fleet. Ships began breaking formation, their precise tactics dissolving in the face of a weapon that bypassed their advanced shields as if they weren't there. The Admiral's voice returned, all traces of mockery gone. What have you done? This defies all known laws of physics. That's humanity's greatest strength, Chen responded, watching as the Varlian fleet scattered. When the laws don't work in our favor, we write new ones. She turned to Rodriguez. Target the next largest concentration of enemy ships. Let's remind them why some weapons are better left buried. The Prometheus moved through space like a ghost, its quantum field rendering it virtually invulnerable to conventional weapons. With each shot of its main weapon, another Varlian ship vanished from reality itself. The mighty alien fleet, which had terrorized Earth for months, found itself facing an enemy that turned their technological superiority into a liability. Core temperature critical, Winters warned. The containment field is starting to fluctuate. We can maybe manage 2 more shots before we risk a cascade failure. Chen studied the tactical display, watching the Varlian fleet's disciplined formation degenerate into chaos. That's all we need. Target their command ship. Let's give them something to remember us by. As the Prometheus lined up its final shot, Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. The Varlians had mocked humanity's primitive technology, never considering that desperation might drive humans to embrace solutions that more advanced civilizations would consider too dangerous to attempt. The quantum beam fired one last time, and the Varlian flagship joined its brethren in dimensional obscurity. In its wake, the remaining alien vessels began a full retreat, their precise formation forgotten in their haste to escape this primitive species that had turned physics itself into a weapon. Stand down, quantum core, Chen ordered. Take us back to Luna Base. I think we've made our point. As the Prometheus leant home, its experimental systems slowly powering down, the message to the galaxy was clear. Underestimate humanity at your own risk. Sometimes the most primitive solution is the one your enemy never sees coming. 2 weeks after the Prometheus's first engagement, Commander Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her formal uniform stark against the chamber's dark walls. The tactical displays behind her showed the approaching Varlian reinforcements, not a scattered fleet this time, but a vast armada led by their most decorated war leader, Supreme Commander Caxval. They're not underestimating us anymore, Chen explained, gesturing to the sensor readings. This fleet is 3 times larger than the first, with ships specifically modified to detect quantum phase signatures. They've been studying us. Admiral Harrison, the Council's senior member, leaned forward. Can the Prometheus stand against these numbers? No, Chen replied bluntly. Not in a direct confrontation. But that's never been humanity's strong suit, has it? The massive hologram at the chamber center showed the Varlian armada's approach vector. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, arranged in a formation designed to counter the Prometheus's phase-shifting capabilities. They had learned from their first defeat, adapting their tactics and technology with frightening speed. Back aboard the Prometheus, Chen found her crew working around the clock to implement Dr. Winter's modifications. The quantum core had been reinforced, its containment systems upgraded based on data from their first battle. But it was the new addition that drew everyone's attention. An experimental system that even the original designers hadn't dared to implement. The quantum resonance cascade, Winters explained, her hands trembling slightly as she brought up the schematics. We're not just phase shifting anymore. We're going to create a feedback loop between multiple quantum states. Rodriguez studied the calculations with growing concern. The energy requirements are astronomical. We'd need to push the core beyond safety limits. Safety limits, Chen mused, watching the Varlian fleet's approach on the tactical display, are a luxury we can no longer afford. The next day, Supreme Commander Caxthal's message reached Earth. His massive hologram towered over the Defense Council chamber, crystalline armor gleaming. Your quantum abomination was impressive, humans, a desperate gamble that earned you a momentary reprieve. But we have adapted. Surrender now, and we will make your extinction painless. Chen's response was brief. Come and find out why we buried the Prometheus in the first place. The battle began 3 days later. The Varlian armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their modified sensors immediately locking onto the Prometheus's quantum signature. Caxthal's flagship, a massive crystalline dreadnought nearly 5 times the size of humanity's vessel, led the charge. They're using quantum-locked targeting systems, Rodriguez reported. Our phase shifting isn't going to surprise them this time. Chen nodded, her grandfather's compass spinning erratically in the quantum disturbance. They adapted to our first trick. Time to show them our second. Dr. Winters, begin the cascade sequence. The Prometheus's quantum core pulsed with new energy as Winters initiated the experimental protocol. The ship's hull began to glow not just with a single phase shift, but with multiple overlapping quantum states. Reality itself seemed to blur around them. Quantum resonance building, Winters called out, her voice tense. Core temperature exceeding all known safety parameters. Field stability at 60% and dropping. The Varlian fleet opened fire, their modified weapons capable of tracking the Prometheus through its phase shifts. But something unexpected happened. Their energy beams began to split and fracture as they entered the quantum resonance field, their coherent beams scattered across multiple realities. By the gods, Caxthal's voice boomed across the command channel. What are you doing? The quantum harmonics are destabilizing the entire sector. Chen's reply was calm. We warned you about underestimating primitive solutions. Dr. Winters, take us to critical resonance. The Prometheus's quantum field expanded, creating a cascading effect that spread through space like ripples in a pond. Varlian ships caught in the effect began to experience multiple quantum states simultaneously, their advanced technology working against them as systems tried to compensate for realities that shouldn't exist. Core temperature beyond critical. Winters shouted over the growing vibration. The cascade is approaching theoretical limits. Hold position. Chen ordered, watching as the nearest Varlian ships began to break apart, their crystalline structures unable to maintain coherence across quantum states. Let them see exactly what humanity's desperate science can do. Caxthal's flagship attempted to retreat, its engines flaring bright against the quantum distortion. But it was too late. The cascade reached critical mass, creating a quantum resonance wave that swept through the Varlian fleet like a tide of broken reality. Ships didn't just phase out of existence this time. They shattered across multiple dimensions, their matter and energy scattered through quantum states that were never meant to interact. The pride of the Varlian armada dissolved into a spectacular display of physics gone wrong. Core containment failing. Winters warned. We need to shut it down now, or we'll tear ourselves apart. Chen waited until the last possible moment, watching as Caxthel's flagship broke apart in a crystalline shower of quantum-shattered debris. Only then did she give the order. "End cascade. Take us home." As the Prometheus limped back to Earth, its systems strained to their breaking point, the message to the galaxy was unmistakable. Humanity might be primitive by Varlian standards, but they were willing to break reality itself before accepting defeat. The remaining Varlian ships fled in disarray, leaving behind a graveyard of quantum-shattered vessels as testament to the danger of dismissing human ingenuity. Sometimes, Chen reflected, the most primitive solution is to simply break all the rules. The Prometheus drifted in high Earth orbit, its quantum core barely contained after the devastating battle. Through the command deck's viewing ports, the quantum-shattered debris of the Varlian fleet sparkled like broken dreams against the void. But Commander Chen knew better than to celebrate too early. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, Rodriguez announced, his voice tight with tension. Massive energy readings. They're nothing like we've seen before. The tactical display lit up with new contacts as the third Varlian fleet emerged. But these ships were different. Gone were the crystalline structures and elegant designs. These vessels were dark, almost organic, their hulls covered in devices clearly designed to manipulate quantum fields. They stripped down their ships, Dr. Winters observed, studying the sensor data, removed everything that could be affected by quantum resonance. These are purpose-built killing machines. A new voice cut through their communications, deeper and more menacing than Caxthel's had been. "I am High Executor Venrex. You have forced us to abandon centuries of technological advancement, to rebuild our ships in primitive configurations. For this humiliation alone, your species must be erased." Chen watched the new fleets approach, noting their formation. They moved like predators, their stripped-down ships resembling ancient sea creatures hunting in packs. "Status of the quantum core?" she asked. "Barely functional," Winters replied. "The cascade nearly destroyed it. We have maybe 20% capacity, and that's being optimistic. The resonance chamber is completely burned out." "They're launching some kind of probe," Rodriguez interrupted. "Thousands of them. They're creating a quantum dampening field." The space around the Prometheus began to shimmer as thousands of small devices activated, generating a field that started to normalize quantum states. Their phase-shifting ability began to flicker and fail. "They're not just trying to beat us," Chen realized. "They're trying to negate the very laws of physics we've been exploiting." The Varlian ships pressed their advantage, their new weapons designed to work in normalized space. The first salvos struck the Prometheus directly, its weakened defenses barely holding. "Hull breach on Deck 3. Rodriguez called out. "We can't take many more hits like that." Chen gripped her command chair as another blast rocked the ship. "Dr. Winters, what happens if we overload the quantum core completely?" Winters looked up sharply. The containment field would collapse. It would create a quantum singularity that would. Her eyes widened as she understood. "Commander, that would tear a hole in space-time itself." "Better than letting them win," Chen replied. "Can you modify the core to direct the collapse?" "Theoretically, yes, but..." Winters worked rapidly at her console. "We'd be at the epicenter. There would be no escape." Chen stood, removing her grandfather's compass from her pocket one last time. "Humanity survived before the Prometheus. They'll survive after it. Begin the modifications." The Varlian fleet continued their assault, their stripped-down ships immune to the quantum effects that had destroyed their predecessors. High Executor Venrex's voice boomed again. "Your tricks are finished, humans. Accept your extinction with dignity. All hands," Chen broadcast throughout the ship, "prepare for emergency evacuation. Get to the escape pods." "That's an order." She turned to her bridge crew. "That means you too. Rodriguez, Winters, get out." "With respect, Commander," Rodriguez replied, his hand steady on the tactical controls. "We started this together." Winters nodded, already working to modify the quantum core. "Someone has to make sure the collapse is properly directed." The Prometheus shuddered under another barrage as the last escape pods launched. Chen watched them streak toward Earth, carrying most of her crew to safety. Then she turned her attention to the approaching Varlian fleet. Quantum core modifications complete, Winters announced. Containment field is ready to fail on command. I've set it to direct the collapse toward the center of their fleet. They're launching another wave of quantum dampeners, Rodriguez reported, trying to prevent what they probably think is another cascade attack. Chen allowed herself a grim smile. They're so focused on stopping what we did before, they can't imagine we'd do something this primitive. She opened a channel to the Varlian fleet. High Executor, you called us primitive. You mocked our technology. Let us show you one last primitive solution. She gave the order. Initiate quantum core overload. The Prometheus's systems screamed as the containment field began to fail. Space itself seemed to bend around them as the quantum core reached critical mass. The Varlian quantum dampeners, designed to normalize space, actually helped concentrate the effect. Core collapse in 10 seconds, Winters called out, her voice steady despite everything. The singularity will be magnificent. Rodriguez managed to laugh. At least we get a front row seat to the end. Chen held her grandfather's compass, watching as its needle spun wildly in the growing gravitational distortion. Let's show them what primitive really means. The quantum core collapsed, and reality tore open. The singularity burst forth, not with a bang, but with the sound of space itself screaming. The Varlian fleet, caught in the gravity well, began to stretch and distort. Their stripped-down ships, designed to resist quantum effects, were helpless against basic physics. Status report, Chen called out, even as the bridge began to twist around them. The singularity is stable, Winters replied, her voice filled with scientific awe even at the end. It's actually feeding off their quantum dampening field. They've trapped themselves. The last thing Commander Chen saw before the light bent completely was the Varlian fleet being drawn inexorably into the tear in spacetime, their primitive designs offering no protection against the most fundamental force in the universe, gravity itself. The Prometheus, at the heart of the singularity, became part of the phenomenon it had created. In its final moments, it proved that sometimes the most primitive solution, simply breaking everything, was the most effective of all. 3 months after the Prometheus's last stand, the quantum singularity had finally stabilized. It hung in Earth's orbit like a dark star, a permanent monument to humanity's determination. The debris field of the Varlian fleet had been drawn in completely, leaving nothing but scattered radiation and sensor readings to tell of the battle that had changed the galaxy. In the newly constructed Orbital Defense Command, Admiral Harrison stood before a wall of memorial plaques. At the center hung Commander Sarah Chen's compass, recovered from one of the Prometheus's data buoys that had been ejected before the final battle. Below it were the names: Chen, Rodriguez, Winters, the crew who had chosen to remain behind. The Varlian Empire has sued for peace, his aide reported, offering a data tablet. Their diplomatic vessels are waiting at the outer system boundary. They're refusing to come closer to the singularity. Harrison nodded, studying the swirling darkness through the reinforced viewing windows. Hard to blame them. Our scientists still can't explain exactly what happened when the quantum core collapsed. We've rewritten half our physics textbooks trying to understand it. The aide hesitated. Sir, they're requesting we dismantle all research into quantum phase technology. They're offering significant technological concessions in exchange. Of course they are, Harrison replied, a slight smile crossing his face. They're terrified we'll build another Prometheus. Show them the reports from the Advanced Sciences Division. The reports detail humanity's new understanding of quantum physics, gleaned from studying the singularity. They showed dozens of projects under development, each more ambitious than the last. The message was clear: humanity wouldn't be caught unprepared again. In the months that followed, the galaxy's political landscape shifted dramatically. The Varlian Empire, once the dominant force in known space, found itself dealing with a species they had dismissed as primitive, but who had turned their own technological superiority against them. Other alien civilizations, watching from afar, began to reassess their views of Earth. The interesting thing, Dr. Carter from the Advanced Sciences Division explained during a council briefing, is that we never would have discovered these principles if the Varlians hadn't pushed us to the brink. Their attacks forced us to explore theories we'd abandoned as too dangerous or impractical. The quantum singularity became known as Chen's point among spacers, a navigational hazard and a reminder. Research vessels from across the galaxy came to study it, always keeping a respectful distance. The Varlians, in particular, established strict quarantine zones around any quantum anomalies they discovered, their once proud fleet now redesigned with simpler, more robust technology. A year after the battle, at the dedication of the new Prometheus Academy of Advanced Sciences, Admiral Harrison spoke to the first class of cadets. The Varlians thought they understood primitive, he told them. They looked at our technology, our ships, our weapons, and saw something inferior. What they failed to understand was that primitive doesn't mean simple. It means fundamental. He gestured to the quantum singularity visible in the evening sky, a new constant in Earth's heavens. Commander Chen and her crew taught the galaxy a lesson about underestimating humanity. When pushed, we don't just use technology. We change the rules of reality itself. That's not primitive. That's power in its purest form. The Academy's first research project was already underway, understanding and controlling quantum phase technology without the desperate measures the Prometheus had required. The Varlians monitored these developments with barely concealed anxiety, their embassy constantly requesting updates on containment protocols and safety measures. In the end, humanity's victory hadn't come from matching Varlian technology, or even from surpassing it. It had come from being willing to do what advanced civilizations considered unthinkable, to break the laws of physics themselves rather than accept defeat. The singularity continued its eternal dance in orbit, a dark reminder to the galaxy: never mistake primitive for powerless. As ships passed by, their crews would often share the story of the Prometheus and its final crew, of how a single human vessel had turned its own destruction into a weapon that reshaped the understanding of space itself. In the Academy's main hall, beneath Commander Chen's preserved compass, a simple plaque bore words that would be repeated across the galaxy for generations to come. They called us primitive. We showed them fundamental. Remember the Prometheus. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something far more dangerous: the willingness to push beyond the impossible when survival demanded it. As other species watched Earth's continued advancement with wary eyes, they remembered the Prometheus and its crew. And they remembered that sometimes the most primitive solution is simply to change the rules of the game entirely. The age of humanity had begun, not with superior technology or overwhelming force, but with the fundamental understanding that in the face of extinction, there are no rules too sacred to break.